Hello. I'm not going to use a microphone. I assume you can hear me up the back? What? Well done. Screen's black at the moment. It's because I just want to make a disclaimer before I start. The people you've heard so far tonight and what you will continue to hear are professionals. I'm not. I'm an unprofessional. I'm a patient. I'm a patient advocate. I was the first prescribed patient for medical cannabis for multiple sclerosis in Western Australia. And that's the reason why I'm here tonight, because I want to show you some stuff. My name's Jason. I'm brain damaged because I've got multiple sclerosis. I used to be the CEO of an IT company, a rather large one, but things changed after I got my MS. I'll say after I got it, I probably had it for a lot longer than I realised, but it got worse. Multiple sclerosis. You guys, you're health professionals. I assume most of you have got a fair idea of what multiple sclerosis is. A progressive, degenerative neurological condition. And in the main, people who get it get worse and worse and worse. And it generally starts off in this first stage, relapsing remitting. You get a little bit sick and you get better. And then it moves to the second stage, secondary progressive. And you get some symptoms and they sort of go away, but they don't really go away. Some of them stick around. And then you get to the final stage, which is the fun stage, which is called primary progressive. And that's where, when you get symptoms, they stick with you, and it might be paralysis. The thing with multiple sclerosis, because it affects your nervous system, it can manifest in many different ways. Numbness and paralysis and loss of balance and permanent nausea and blindness and deafness. The list is endless. Anything that your nerves are responsible for can be damaged in some way, shape or form. So it affects many people in many different ways. That's an MRI of my brain. We're getting intimate here. You've now all seen inside me. It's lovely. Can anybody identify something about that MRI that shouldn't be there? Hey, perfect. Those white spots are not meant to be there. They're what we call lesions, multiple sclerosis, multiple mini sclerosis scarring. So that's scarring. They're areas of my brain that have been permanently damaged and they're unlikely to ever be recovered by anything, by any sort of treatment. It's progressive. It's chronic. I'm only going to get worse. That's where things get interesting. The EDSS. This is the Expanded Disability Status Scale. Now, I want you to look at that scale and place yourself on it. Where are most of you? Would you suggest that, say, most of you are probably under a 2? I'd say so. I saw most of you climb the stairs. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed on this scale. Where do you reckon I came? Have a guess. Go on, shout some numbers out.
7.
Ooh, 7. Oh, it's a look. Do I look disabled to you?
No.
I am. How the hell did that happen? Very strange. Very complex. I don't really understand it because, funnily enough, not that long ago, I had a whole bunch of deficits. There's a picture with me, my walking stick. You're too young to need a stick, people said. But there's a list of the symptoms that I was experiencing. That's just some of them. They're the ones that I could be bothered putting up on the list. I'm not going to talk through them because you can read them all. But for me, perhaps the worst part about it all was the chronic pain. I got multiple sclerosis, and supposedly the main thing about that is spasticity and muscle stiffness. And when you talk about MS, people generally don't talk about the pain, and the pain in your extremities and your fingers and your toes and in my cheeks, the nerves that ran through my cheeks here, to the point where you're clawing away at your cheeks because you can't get to where the pain is being caused. So what was I to do? My neurologist, who thankfully is a bit of a black sheep in the WA neurological community, said to me, Jace, we've come down to the last 2 options. I can either put you on a medication which is experimental, which only has one side effect, possible massive brain infection, or we can try medical cannabis. And I looked at him and I said, I've been brought up right. I'm not going to try a gateway drug. I know that this is bad. I've been taught my whole life that this is something terrible. And the next thing I'm going to be out there jonesing on the street trying to get heroin and LSD and cocaine and all these other drugs. Surely. And he went, well, you've got some things to learn. Go away, read up on it, and come back to me. Well, let's just say within 24 hours, I was back in his surgery and I was busily getting a prescription for medical cannabis. First patient in WA, quite proud of that. And I tell you what, it has absolutely changed my life. Now, let's go to the next slide. I've got something in my pocket here that I want you to see. That there, does that work? That's it. That, lots of people say to me, oh, you're on medical cannabis. How many joints do you smoke a day? It doesn't work like that. And if anybody tries to tell you that medical cannabis is CBD only, that's nonsense as well, as you've already heard. There's multiple different formulations. I'm on a balanced THC and CBD formulation. And it's changed my world. It's changed everything. It's supposedly with MS, the indication is that you get it for muscle spasticity. But everything's changed. My chronic pain's gone away. I'm no longer limping. I'm no longer numb. I still have some symptoms, and I'm going to continue to have symptoms. I still have bad days. Sometimes I'll wake up and I know the days are right off before I even get out of bed. But it's like that. Medical cannabis is safe. I found this out for myself. You laugh, but I'll put a challenge to you. You're pharmacists. You know what substances can do. Now, let's imagine you and I are sitting across a table. You've got a full packet of Panadol, and I've got my full 60ml bottle of medical cannabis. I'm going to challenge you to consume that entire packet of Panadol, and I'm going to scull my entire bottle of medical cannabis. In the morning, I'm going to come and see you in hospital while you're dying of painful liver failure, and I'll probably bring you some twisties because I'll still be a little bit, I'll still have the munchies at that point. That raises another very good point. Can you get high on medical cannabis? Oh, yes, my word, you can. Absolutely. And because it's fat soluble, the THC component of it particularly, if I take a really fatty meal half an hour before I take my medication, I will feel the effects of it, which is why I should not drive. Under the influence of anything, inebriated in any kind of way, you shouldn't be driving. So when people ask the question, should I be driving when I'm taking medical cannabis? No, you shouldn't, nor if you drink, for that matter, or if you're on opioids. And I'll get to that in a point as well, because that is actually another very interesting thing. There's a lot of side effects, isn't there? Or isn't there? Funnily enough, I was at a presentation the other night where a doctor said, one of the side effects of medical cannabis is euphoria. And I thought that was really strange, because I was under the impression that medicines are either supposed to make you better or make you feel better. So surely that is one of the benefits or one of the reasons that you take medical cannabis in the first place, is to feel better. This whole argument that being euphoric and being a little bit high is a bad or a dangerous or a negative thing seems like a very Victorian era argument to me. We want patients to feel good. I feel better in so many different ways. So medical cannabis, what it is to me is a term that Sue already brought up. It's about quality of life, because it's changed everything. Everything. I was becoming progressively more and more disabled. I was literally 2 months away from going into a wheelchair. And today I don't even use a walking stick anymore. I'm an anecdote, apparently, because I'm not part of a RCT. But you know what? I've been a patient advocate now for coming up 2 years, and I have met hundreds of people that are having similar benefits. That's not to say it's going to work for everyone. I'll never make that promise. But like my wife can take 2 Disprin for a headache and not feel anything. I can take 2 and my headache goes away. It's different for every single person. Let's move ahead. January last year, I weighed 17 more kilos than what I do now. I'm still overweight, but I was a lot more overweight then. Do I put it down exclusively to the medical cannabis? No, I don't. But the fact that I used to be on 8 different daily medications, and I'm now down to 1, plus the medical cannabis, can only have worked in my favour. I was on Seroquel, I was on Lyrica, I was on oxycodone, or the equivalent thereof. The amount of stuff that I was on was absolutely ludicrous. And today, I take Cifrol because I still get the shakes at night. And I take medical cannabis. What would you rather be on? 8 medications? I mean, we talk about contraindications between 2 medicines. What happens when you've got 8? They can't have possibly done studies into how the 8 of them interact. It's just ridiculous. So it's reduced my medicine intake and it treats my symptoms particularly well. I want to show you this slide because this is how I felt when I was finally able to throw away my walking stick. It seems a bit childish, doesn't it? But that genuine sense of joy when you're no longer an invalid. Not that there's anything wrong with being an invalid, but if you've got a choice in the matter, which way do you want to go? It's that simple. This is a touchy-feely bit, and I've got to put this in here because I think this is perhaps one of the more important parts of this whole discussion. What it's done in terms of quality of life is that instead of being the disabled dad who sat on the sofa and not able to play with the kids or participate in their lives, I am now mostly back to being what I always thought I would be when it comes to being a dad. That makes a difference, not just to them, but to me in terms of my own perception, my own self-image. Also super, super, super important, and this is here because she's here tonight, it allows me to be the husband my wife married. Now, I know that she would have stuck around as I got progressively more disabled. There's no doubt, I know that. But if I can have a hand in making sure I'm not disabled, she didn't sign up to live with a disabled guy, why wouldn't I do everything within my power to make sure that she's got the best life she can have as well? It's not just about me, it's about my family and the people that surround me. It allows you to be the person who you think you are. You know, you look in the mirror, you see yourself, you know what you are, you know what you think you are, your whole life you've perceived yourself. And suddenly with MS, you go from, in a period of months, from being that person into being someone who's quite disabled, really profoundly disabled, really. That's, when you look in the mirror, that affects your whole psyche. It affects who you are and how you think, and you get depressed. For me, it's meant that I no longer need to be depressed. And in fact, I've gone quite the other way. I think I'm a bit manic now, really. The takeaway from all of this, does anybody know who this man is? And what is James Brown famous for? Well, yes, you might say that. But in actual fact, that's not really the takeaway. That's just the bit before the takeaway. The reason I put that is that I do feel good. I feel much better. I look much better, hopefully. The real takeaway from all of this is that because I am now on less medications and I'm enjoying life and the people around me are enjoying me better than when I was that grouchy old sod, see that? That was about 17, I was going to say 17 years ago. It was about 17 kilos ago. The real takeaway out of all of this is not that I feel better, it's that I feel much less bad. And I think the reason that I felt so bad wasn't just the MS, it was all those medications that I was on. The Lyrica was doing me no good. The opioids were doing me no good. The antidepressants were doing me no good. This list, it was doing pharmacists quite a lot of good, I'm sure. Doing me no good at all. So medical cannabis is something that I'm out there now not just talking about, I've become so passionate about it that it's my responsibility now to go out and talk to people, and that's what I do. That is now what I spend most of my time doing, is going out and talking to people, telling them my story, and saying to them that our experience of medical cannabis, and cannabis in general to this date, is that we know it is not particularly harmful. We have found evidence of cannabis use in the sarcophagi of mummies, which means we know we've been using it for at least 6,000 years. And if it was dangerous, I think by now we probably would have worked that out. I don't see any stoners with extra limbs, so I'm figuring even heavy usage is reasonably safe. Doing it under a doctor's supervision is even better. Let me touch on that very quickly before I finish up. When I first got prescribed, the TGA sent me a letter. They said, "Dear Mr. Jordan, we have no idea what the correct dosage is for a person with your condition or your body weight. Thanks very much. We would appreciate it if you would titrate up and down and find your own optimal dose and let us know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional in any sense of the term. I've rapidly become one. But I ask you the question now, what organisation, government organisation, reasonable, rational bureaucracy, bit of an oxymoron, would possibly come out to you and say, we want you to experiment on yourself with an unregistered drug? The reason they did that is because they know full well that this is not a particularly dangerous substance. I could tell you lots more stories about it. I'm not going to because I don't want to seem even less professional than what I am. Have a read of that and then don't throw things at me. I've gotten to the point where I am so frustrated and so angry at the bureaucracy and the stigma and the inertia and the arrogance of so many of our doctors who are unwilling to even learn about this, that I've gotten to the point where I've started generating this kind of content to go out on social media, and it gets spread like wildfire as memes and viral kind of content that goes out on Facebook and all the others. And it needs to be done, because unfortunately pushing slowly is not having the required effect. So I think it's going to take people who are passionate about this and who've got direct experience of this to actually start putting their foot down and actually start making some noise, which is what I'm doing. My name's Jason. I am not an anecdote. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for listening to my story.